¿Qué significa cómo se dice? ¿Qué significa cómo se dice? What does ¿qué significa mean? Correct. ¿Qué significa means what does it mean? So, ¿qué significa cómo se dice? Correcto. Bueno. ¿Cómo se dice which? Like which one? En español. ¿Cómo se dice which one or which? There's a list of question words somewhere in the first half of your textbook. Try to find them. We've gone over them before. Words like where, what, when, how, which, who. ¿Cómo se dice which one? ¿Cómo se dice which one? Or which? Any guess? It's cual. C-U-A-L. Cual. Okay? Everyone say that. Cual. Cual. Good. Like which one? Okay. ¿Cómo se dice en español? ¿Cómo se dice I am going to the bathroom? Andrew, you should know because you've used it. How do you say, ¿cómo se dice I'm going to the bathroom? So, something to the bathroom. It's from the verb ir, which is to go. Remember, puedo ir al baño would be may I go to the bathroom. So let's conjugate ir. Ir is the verb to go. So we've got yo voy, right? We saw that yesterday. Look at the irregular verbs on the left side. It says ir, to go. And then it's got those 6 conjugations, right? Let's say them together. Voy, everyone. Voy. Vas. Va. Vamos. Vais. Van. Bueno. So, ¿qué significa voy? ¿Qué significa voy? Huh? Sí, I go. All right. ¿Qué significa el verbo tener? ¿Qué significa tener? To have. Bueno. ¿Y cómo se dice I have? Tengo. Bueno. Tengo. Okay. ¿Cómo se dice book en español? Libro. Bueno, tengo. Entonces, okay. Entonces significa then or so then. Entonces, ¿cómo se dice I have a book? Tengo blanco libro. ¿Cómo se dice I have a book? Yes. Tengo un libro. Bueno. Okay. If I want to say something in the future, that's not these endings, right? O or a, hoy, as, a, amos, ais, an. Remember I said these endings and the regular AR endings, ER and IR, which are here, were present tense indicative. Okay, yesterday we said that these verbs were irregular. Okay? Were irregular, but they were all still present tense indicative. Can somebody tell me what indicative means? I said yesterday what it means, but can someone repeat it? What does it mean for a verb to be indicative? It's very similar to another verb in English. To what? Indicative is to not be. You said be? Not be. Well, I mean, maybe you're getting at that idea, but that's not the best word to describe it. To indicate. Okay? To indicate. In other words, by comparison, not to command. Okay? Not to be like a possibility. You're simply indicating what's happening. Right now, I'm teaching. Okay? So if I wanted to say that in Spanish, enseñar is the verb to teach. It's an AR verb. So my endings for present tense, indicative, right now, simply indicating what's happening, is enseño. Okay? Because it's an AR verb, regular AR verb, so you replace the AR with an O. Okay? So these endings, O, as, a, amos, ais, an, they simply mean that you're describing what is going on. Okay? Present tense means you're describing what's going on right now. But it's not saying it's a possibility. So there's different endings, different conjugation endings, if you're going to command someone, or if you're going to say that this maybe is happening. Okay, there's different endings for that. So these are indicative, present tense. Now, if I want to say something will happen in the future instead of present tense, then there's also different endings. Okay? But before we start learning those other endings, there's a really simple way of describing what's going to happen in the future. Do you hear that? What's going to happen. Okay? That's where this verb comes in. So yes, ir means to go. Voy al baño means I go. But all of these regular present tense indicative verbs can be translated I blank, like I go, or I blank as in I am going, or I am enseño, I am teaching. Okay? So it could be present tense, enseño, I teach, or enseño could be translated present tense continuous. I am teaching. Okay, so these conjugations with these endings for AR, ER, and IR, the regular O, AS, almost, ice, on, can be translated as present tense or present tense continuous. So you can go either way. That means that we can use ir as a way of saying I am going to do something else, which means in the future. So if you want to learn to say something in the future, then this is a great place to start. Okay? Making sense so far? So let's do a few practices with that before we move on to the verb tener. So instead of saying I am going to the bathroom, we're going to put a verb at the end. How would I say I am going? How do you say, ¿cómo se dice I am going? Take the verb to go and choose the right conjugation. ¿Cómo se dice I am going? Voy, right, okay. Voy. Make sure I don't say something wrong. Okay. How do I say to teach? How do I say to teach? Good. Enseñar. Now, we've got two sentences. Voy al baño means I am going. And then al is a mixture of a plus el. So it means to the, right? Bathroom. When we want to say, I am going to do something, these infinitives have in it the idea of to do whatever. So to teach. Okay, so like hablar means, hablar does not mean speak, it means to speak. Okay? So even though these infinitives mean enseñar, you still need to add the word a, which means to. So I am going to teach. So it might seem like it's a little redundant because to is kind of in there twice, once in the infinitive and once in the word, but you do still need to include the word when you're using ir, the verb ir, with an infinitive. Okay? So, how do I say I'm going to teach? Let's say it. Voy a enseñar. Try it again. Voy a enseñar. Okay, now, no, you're not going to teach. So now you guys, what would you respond? You say we are going to learn, right? Okay, so how do you say we are going? Right. Vamos. What's next? Right, good. And does anybody know how to say to learn? Okay, if you don't know, that's okay. If you don't know something in Spanish, the best thing you can do is before you go and look it up, try to think of a different word you know that kind of gets at the same idea. What other words are like the verb to learn? In this context, if you don't know how to say to learn, what is something else you could say? Because the goal is to communicate. The goal is not to get everything right. I don't even get everything right. In fact, I get more things wrong than I get things right when I'm trying to talk to someone in Spanish. But I can communicate anyway, and that's the goal. That's my goal. My goal for Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 in high school is not for you guys to know perfect grammar in Spanish. It's for you to communicate, in other words, to be able to use what you know. So even if what you know isn't exactly what you want to say, that's okay. So if we don't know how to say to learn, what is a different verb we could say instead of learn? Something similar to that idea. Listen? Okay, good. How do we say to listen? Okay, what's a verb we know? Does anybody know how to say to listen? Okay, what about a different verb? Learn, to listen. Okay, good. We're going to read. How do you say to read? Anybody know how to say to read? Okay, well, we've got some vocab to learn then, don't we? We've got learn, listen, read. What's another one? A word you should know. Hear. Okay. How do you say hear? Oír. Good. So how do I say this? I will teach. Voy a enseñar. And how do you say we're going to hear? Vamos a oír. Try it again. Vamos a oír. One more time. Vamos a oír. Good. Okay. So the one I was thinking was we will listen. Huh? No, that's... Shoot, I don't even remember what the verb was. That's okay. So vamos a oír. Now, let's look at this dialogue here. Buenos días, mamá. Buenos días, mi querida. Voy a salir. Marta says, voy a salir pronto para la universidad. Okay, what does voy a salir mean? What is she saying? Que diga? Que dice? Voy a salir. You can look at the verbs on the left. I am leaving, or I am going to leave. To leave. ¿Y a dónde? ¿A dónde va a salir? Where is she? Va a salir. Where is she going to leave? To where? Voy a salir. ¿A dónde? University. Okay. ¿Y qué significa pronto? You know, if your mom says, okay, clean up the dishes pronto, what does that mean? Right now. Yeah, it does mean clean the dishes. But pronto means right away, quickly. Pronto for the university. And then she says, tengo muchas cosas. Muchas cosas. ¿Qué significa muchas? ¿Qué significa muchas? Much. Y cosas significa things. Okay? Muchas cosas. Tenemos. So tener. And then we have singular, plural. Tenemos muchas cosas a aprender. Tenemos muchas cosas a aprender. We have many things to learn. Okay? All right, so she says, tengo muchas cosas que hacer hoy. So it would be tenemos muchas cosas que aprender. We have many things to learn. So what is going on with this tengo? So if tener means to have, and then you pair it with a verb, it's saying I have to do something, rather than I have things. Like I have a book. That was our example, right? Tengo un libro would be tengo un libro. When we use tener, the verb tener, with a verb, you have to add the word que. So sticking with the theme of a book, tengo un libro means I have a book. To read is leer. Okay? So leer means to read. So if we want to say I have a book, it's tengo un libro. But just like the verb ir, we have to add the word a with the verb. If you're going to say I have to do something, instead of I have a book, I have to read, you need to add the word que with no accents. So that's what it says here. Let's turn the page. And the second example says, another way of expressing an obligation, what you have to do, is to use the construction tener que and then plus el infinitivo. So in this case we have tener plus que plus the infinitive. I have to read. That expresses an obligation. Okay? So that's what we're looking at today, is using ir with other verbs, like enseñar, other verbs, as opposed to places or nouns. Okay? We're looking at ir with verbs. We're looking at tener with verbs instead of other nouns. That's what we're doing today. All right, we are also learning, it might be learning, it might be review. But if you look at the top of 186, it says, in Spanish, there are multiple constructions you can use to talk about your plans. In previous chapters, you learned that the verbs necesitar and deber can be used with infinitives to describe obligations. So we have one way here of saying what you have to do. All right? But we have two other verbs, necesitar and deber. So let's just quick talk about those a minute. And then you can get started on your homework. Okay, ¿qué significa necesitar? Necesitar. Right away, you should notice the AR, which means you know it's a verb, which means you know the meaning should be to do something, okay? And then you can guess, based on the root, because it's a cognado, you can guess what the word means. So, ¿qué significa necesitar? To need. Good. Okay, and ¿qué significa deber? It's also a verb, which you know because of the ER ending. So you know that meaning is to something. So look at the root. Does anybody know what this verb means? ¿Qué significa deber? To do? Is that what you said? Yeah. That is close, but the to do is hacer. So to do or make is the verb hacer. But that's a good guess. Deber. Look at the root. Remember everything except the ER? What does that look like in English? Debate? Close. Not the right root, but that is a really good guess. Debt. When you have a debt, that's where this word comes from. Deber. Deber means to owe. So if you owe money, okay, if you owe somebody $5. But owing somebody something is a noun. Just like tener uses nouns, ir uses nouns. When you're going to a place, that's a noun. Deber means to owe when it's with a noun. But you can use deber with a verb. Placing a verb after, just like these, instead of a noun. And then it doesn't exactly mean, in English, it doesn't translate to owe. It would translate to ought to. Which doesn't really make sense as a literal translation. But that's the idea. So I ought to do something, which is then a verb. So let's make an example sentence. Debo. Let's see. Debo terminar mi tarea. Okay, anybody have a guess of what terminar means? You should know right away that it's not I owe someone something because it's a verb. So it would mean I ought to do something. And what does terminar mean? To what? To terminate? Is that what you said? Is that what you said? Terminal? Have you guys heard about terminal list? I want to see that. It looks good. But no, not exactly. Very, very close though. I ought to terminate. Sort of. What else does this mean? That's Terminator, right? What does it mean to terminate? To take out, yeah. I'm going to take out my homework. Finish, exactly. To terminate means to finish. Okay, so terminar means to finish. So I ought to finish, or I ought to finish my homework. Okay, so looking at these examples at the top of 186, Juan, so John, necesita, notice that's the o, as, a. So we have AR verbs, singular is o, as, a. We have necesitar, AR verb, drop the AR, there's your root, necesit, and then you add this suffix, this suffix, the a, necesita, so that means third person singular, he needs, who is he? Who's he? Blank necesita, who does it say? Juan, right. So Juan needs estudiar. He needs something or to do something. To study, right. So it's a verb. John needs to study tonight, esta noche. And then los chicos, is los chicos singular or plural? Plural, right, because it's los and chicos, plural. So that means that the verb los chicos are doing is going to be plural. So we have ER, change this to ER. O, es, hemos, es, en. Deber is an ER verb. So we drop the ER and add the root to the plural, which is deben, right there. So that's what it says. Los chicos deben, plural. Regresar a casa. The boys ought to return to the house. Antes de las nueve. No, de las nueve. Before 9. Okay, notice the examples again on the next part. Juan tiene. Juan has. But then it adds the que and then a verb. So we know it means Juan has to do something rather than he has some item. Juan tiene que estudiar esta noche. Juan needs or has to study tonight. Los chicos, the boys, tienen que regresar. The boys ought to. Or not they ought to, that was deber. The boys have to return. So there are different ways now that you know how to use tener, ir, necesitar, and deber to describe what you should do or what you will do in the future. Any questions? Okay, let's do a couple of the homework from activity 9. Answer each question yes or no. Tienes que hacer la cama. What did we say hacer means? To do or make, right. So, which one do we pick? Does hacer in this sentence mean to do or to make? It's going to be based on the context. So, what does the context say? What does la cama mean? ¿Qué significa la cama? You can look it up if you need. In a minute. What does la cama mean? Look it up if you need to. Bed. Okay, so what is this saying? Tienes, who is that referring to? It's an ER verb, tener. So who is tienes? You, right. Es. You, what? Tienes que. You have to what? Do you have to make the bed? Right. So tienes que hacer la cama. If it's not a question, and I just say, tienes que hacer la cama, it means you have to make the bed. But if it's a question, in English we add a word. Do you? Even though the word do is not in Spanish. Okay? So, in this case, the question says, ¿Tienes que hacer la cama? Do you have to make your bed? Sí o no? ¿Sí? Para mí? No. I don't. My wife does. Because she's still sleeping when I leave. So. Okay, good. Everyone understand how to use tener que, ir a, deber, and necesitar? Raise your hand if you feel like I understand it. Good. Are there any questions? Dane, any questions? Okay, go ahead and get started on your homework. If you come across the question, I want you to come call me over, say, Mr. Gray, if I don't understand how to do this, let me know, okay? Yes. Ben, you can go to your locker.